So, just before I say anything, this core assessment will be done with myself, Curtis Venema, then Kaylea Barrow, then Emma Roller, and Jeffery Paczynski. And so we're doing our argument on motion by Aquinas. And so basically just to go over that, it's in the natural world there are objects that are in motion. In the natural world, objects that are in motion are always caused to move by objects. In the natural world, causes must precede their effects. In the natural world, there are no infinite cause-effect chains. Hence, there is an entity outside of natural world which causes the motion of the first moving objects that exist in the natural world. Hence, God exists. So going into the reasons and evidence for the premises, we first brought up the point that if an object is in motion, then it must be caused to move by something other than itself. So Aquinas got this from Aristotle's physics, which is basically if an object continues to move, its motion must be sustained by a force that keeps it in motion. But that didn't really translate to modern physics. So we started looking at something like Newton's first law, which is an object cannot move on itself. It must have an outside force to start its motion. So F equals ma. And yet again, Aristotle and Aquinas thought that motion required an outside force, while Newton and more modern physics theories hold that as acceleration. So then we went more into Aquinas' reasoning, concludes that there must be a supernatural entity that causes the first acceleration upon objects in nature, which then went even further into the reason for no infinite causes and effect chains. There would be no reason for an entity outside of nature to exist, just because there'd be nothing to even start anything. It would just continually go and continue to go and continue to go and continue to go. So why do we need someone outside of our nature? So if it was infinite, there would be no reason to have an initial cause and effect, for example, putting the first object in motion. So now we're going to go to are the premises true or false? So there's an object that is in motion. We believe that is true just because everything in motion is due to a force being acted upon these objects. And if there were no forces being acted upon, there would be no motion happening. So just if you think about it, all the universe that it started, if the Big Bang did happen, then if there was no force that acted upon it, nothing would actually be here. So then we move on to the second one, just that objects are in motion are always caused by objects other than themselves, which is also true, which is just for more that the motion will stay in motion unless acted upon by an outside source. We just find that the first two premises of objects are in motions and that objects are always in motion other than themselves just kind of go together. And then with the third one, causes must precede their effects. We also said that was true. It follows from the concept of causation, that nothing causes itself and causes always precede their effects, and also that motion doesn't happen for itself. A force has to be acted upon the motion. And then lastly, just with there are no infinite cause and effect chains. An infinite cause-effect chain has no start, so there's no initial action for it to start. And now we'll move on to Kaylea.
Is the argument deductively valid? The argument is deductively valid for all the premises are true. Each premise isn't unreasonable, for it is grounded in logic reasoning and has the potential to be falsified. Yet again, for the main reason for the premise being true is because in order for an object to be in motion, other objects must enact force upon them to create motion. Another reason for the argument to be deductively valid is due to the fact that it follows the format modus ponens, which is if P, then Q. P, therefore Q. The reason behind this is that the premises that are being presented are true. Then the conclusion must also be true as a result.
Okay, so I'm going to be evaluating the performance of our argument. So the performance of the argument kind of represents itself as being sufficient, although many aspects of the argument can be considered questionable. Some examples of this revolve around Aquinas and Aristotle's beliefs towards physics, which don't follow within the model of modern day physics. In order to make better sense of the argument, one must alter how they perceive the text and exchange a few words throughout it. Specifically, the argument would have to incorporate Newton's first law for it to be an exemplary level in modern day physics.
Aquinas realizes that his conclusion does not follow the proposition. The proposition is that an entity outside of nature causes the first moving object in nature. The proposition doesn't guarantee the existence of God. We agree with the conclusion because an initial movement had to enact to create the fundamental of the universe, the fundamentals of the universe. The more reasonable explanation is that there is a superior entity that is outside of our natural world that manipulates forces upon our world, and that would then create causation. The logical explanation that would represent a superior entity exhibits the characteristics and the description of God. Looking at the premise scientifically, if the comprehension of motion is turned towards Newton's first law, then it would strengthen the premise and create a more conclusive result to the argument that Aquinas has. When an individual looks scientifically into creation, aspects like Newton's first law creates a more compelling argument towards a superior being because scientific research leaves creation open-ended, pointing towards the higher power manipulating nature.